So I'd like to say good afternoon to our participating communities in Ontario and good morning to our communities participating in the Northwest Territories. Welcome everyone to day 2 of the Level 1 training session, Business of Community Networks. I'd like to recognize and thank any chief and council members, community champions, and community members that are on the call today. I just would like to reiterate again that this pilot project would not have gotten off the ground without the commitment from the participating communities and the hard work of the community champions. Miigwech, Masi, Chodawal. My name is Bruce Visitor. I'm the project manager for the pilot project. I've been operating my own business for over 15 years now, and I work with Indigenous clientele across Ontario. I'm a certified professional accountant, and I'm a member of Whitefish River First Nation here in Ontario. I'll be your host / moderator for today's session. So before we get into the presentations, just a few housekeeping items before we get started. So if you could please set your microphone to mute if you haven't already done so, just so we can limit the background noise from the speakers when they are presenting. You can turn your camera on or off, it's up to you. In terms of questions during the presentations, if you have a question, just use the icon button below with your hand, raise it. I will try to see it and recognize it and see if I can get your question asked. Either you can ask it or I can ask it. Alternatively, you can use the chat on the side and post your question there. And then we will get to that question as soon as we can get a break from the presenter. The other thing is the agenda is posted in the chat, so you can see it at the top there, top right-hand corner. I'd also like to mention that the session today is being recorded. If you do want a copy of the recording, you can just post a message in the chat and we can get you a copy once those become available. That's all the housekeeping items. So on that note, I'd like to introduce Dr. Hossein Badran. Dr. Badran is the Senior Director, Internet Growth and Trust for the Internet Society and is also serving as the project lead for the project. Dr. Badran will now provide you with an overview of the pilot project.
Thank you so much.
You're muted, Hossein.
Okay. Hopefully now it's better. Okay. Thank you, Bruce, for the kind introduction. It's a great honor to be presenting today to the communities in Indigenous communities in Northern Ontario and Northwest Territories. It's a great also pleasure and privilege to be hosted today in the Chippewas of Newash Unceded First Nation. I would like to thank Mike Earl and Terry for hosting me here today at the Band Council offices. It's a great pleasure. It's a very, very nice place right on the lake. Let me share my presentation to give an overview of the project. So this, the title of the project is to connect Indigenous communities in Northwest Territories and Ontario. This is a result of collaboration between the Internet Society and the National Search Council of Canada. The Internet Society is an not-for-profit organization. Our vision is really to connect the unconnected and provide internet access to everyone on the globe. Our mission is to support and promote and advocate for an internet that's globally available, that's open and trustworthy and secure, and that has a very positive impact on people's lives as a technical resource and infrastructure to provide access to education, health services, employment capabilities, all being done online. Of course, to achieve this goal and connect the unconnected, we collaborate with other organizations, civil society, with the communities, of course, like we're discussing today, as well as with government agencies and with academia. This particular project, as I mentioned, is a result of a collaboration between National Research Council of Canada, member of ISAD, and the Internet Society. And the aim of the project is really to help bridge the digital divide by connecting communities in Ontario and Northwest Territories, and provide capacity building capabilities and training capabilities to help these communities really get connected to the internet. The project is divided in 4 phases, assembling an advisory committee of Indigenous experts, as well as experts from academia, from related government agencies or civil society organizations. And this was accomplished. We have an advisory committee of 10 members, 6 of them are from Indigenous communities, as I will share their names towards the end of the presentation, who really guide the operation of the project, its deliverables, as well as identify the communities that will be invited to participate in this project, which are yourselves. Then we have level 1 of training, foundation training on community networks that we had yesterday and last week. But the description, what is community network, what is the connectivity landscape in Canada, who are the critical organizations in Canada and globally for internet access. And then the second course is on the business side of internet connectivity and community networks, which we discuss today. This is offered for 10 communities. A subset of these communities who are really keen to go over to the second level of training. 3 of them will be invited to participate in other 3 courses that will take place in January and February of next year. During the final stages of the project, we'll assemble a case study, documented case study of one of these communities who participated in the training, and also video footage and testimonials about the participation and engagement of communities in this training and how they benefit this training. A very important component that we will hear about from Rob and Samantha just after me is evaluation of the impact of this course, the content, and also how the participants have benefited from this course through surveys and through interviews that will be conducted by members of the communities. Finally, this is the composition of the advisory committee. We have members who are delivering this training. Tim White, that be one of them. Yesterday, Mike Jolly and Jesse Fiedler delivered a part of the training as well. And Rob McMahon, also on the advisory committee, is also part of the evaluation consultancy. And this is list of the communities that have committed to participate in the level 1 training. 8 of them are in Ontario, in North Ontario and also Southern Ontario, and 2 communities from the Clichy community in Northwest Territories. And I see some of them on the call with us today. So welcome in the training, and hope this training is beneficial to all of you. And thank you very much for dedicating the time and contributing to this success of this collaboration. Back to you, Bruce.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Bertrand, for that very informative presentation. Before we go on, I just also like to thank the Chippewas of Nawash and Ceded First Nation for agreeing to host myself and Hossein for this session. Thank you to Michael Earl, the CEO there, and Chief and Counsel as well. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to be on site due to family matters, but I was definitely looking forward to being there for sure. So thank you as well. Now we're going to move on to Samantha Blais. Samantha is a PhD candidate at the University of Alberta and is working on the monitoring and evaluation aspects of the project. She is going to provide a brief overview of the learning objectives related to today's session. Samantha.
Thank you, Bruce. So for today, we're looking in terms of evaluation at certain things. So the learning objectives today, you should be able to understand the first steps involved in setting up a community-based networks, feel comfortable in reaching out to the support network of First Nations experts providing the training, know the cost of different types of infrastructure for your community-based networks, identify possible funders for community-based networks, describe the tasks, challenges, and benefits of owning and operating a community-based networks, and understand the resources and staffing required to run and maintain a community-based networks. So these are the learning objectives that we're evaluating, and I'm going to put them in the chat just for your reference.
Thank you so much, Samantha. So I'm going to now introduce Rob McMahon. Rob is an associate professor at the University of Alberta and is managing the monitoring and evaluation aspects of the project. He will now provide an overview of the evaluation component related to the training today. Rob?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Bruce, and hi, everyone. So for those of you, I think most people joined yesterday, so we're doing a very similar process as yesterday. But just as a quick refresher, so what we're doing for the evaluation is we're looking at, because this is a pilot program, we're especially looking to hear from the learners and participants in terms of what their experiences is like with these training sessions. So the way that we'll do that is by sending 2 sets of surveys. We do one right now before the training starts. So I'll put a link in the chat. That's about 5 minutes of survey questions. And then we'll also follow up at the very end to do one after you've heard from our instructors today. And so what we're doing with this evaluation is it's to support the continual improvement of the program, as well as doing some research in this area around community networks training. All of your personal identities your privacy is totally protected. We do ask you for your email address and also the first letter of your first name and your last name. And that's just to see how people's understanding or confidence levels or so on may have changed over the course of the training. So we won't share that information with anybody else. And I'll just also note that the plan for the evaluation, it's undergone the ethics review at the university, as well as review by the advisory committee for this project. Yeah, if you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or I'll just pause here as I put the link into the chat. So I'm happy to answer any questions, and thanks, everyone.
Okay, thanks, Rob. As you can see, the pre-course link is in the chat now. So if you could take a few minutes, click on that and fill it out, we'd greatly appreciate that. So we'll take about 3 minutes now to let everybody complete that pre-course survey. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm very sorry. I accidentally put in the day 1 survey. So stop, hold your horses, please. I put in the wrong survey link. Still drinking my morning coffee. Just one moment. Okay. I've just put in the day 2 link. Please go to that one. And again, my apologies. That was an oversight on my part.
I think we're ready to get started here. So thank you so much, Rob, for that. Now that we've gotten through all of the pre-training activity, I'd now like to call on our first presenter of the day, Tim Whiteduck. Tim is the IT director at the First Nations Education Council, and we are very pleased to have him here with us today. Tim, can you provide some additional background information on yourself and then proceed with your presentation?
Sure. Bruce, thanks for the introduction. Kwei, good morning, everybody. My name is Tim Whiteduck. I'm an Anishinaabe Algonquin from Kitigan-Zibi, Maniwaki, Quebec. I presently work for the First Nations Education Council, which are based in Quebec City, in the Huron village of Wendake. I've been there for almost 20 years now, working in technologies. Before that, I was working in my community in technologies as the coordinator as coordinator at the school in the community. And before that, I used to work for Energy Mines and Resources as a systems administrator. So if you add up all those years, it's a while back. So anyway, I hope that my presentation today will describe our story well, because it took us a little while to get there, but I'm hoping that the information that I provide you today will give you a good idea of doing your own broadband, and in particular fiber optics, because there was decisions to be made, and you're going to have the same choices to make when you do your own broadband, but you got to think of the long term. So I'll explain some of those crossroads that you're going to have to get to. So I'm going to share my screen now, so just bear with me. Okay, so you have my email. So like I said, I'll be talking about community broadband today. And I'm just going to scroll down here. Okay, it doesn't work that way. Here's my mouse. Okay, so a bit about ourselves, or about who I work for. We're the First Nations Education Council. We're based in Quebec City, and these are the communities who are members of our organization. So these communities are also, how would you say, there's a political mandate behind it as well. So if ever, whatever projects we do, we have that means to promote projects within the members that you see there with projects. So when our fiber project came about, this was presented to all chiefs in this region, in this membership. So I'll explain how we did that later on, but this is the political, the landscape of what we work with in terms of our members. Oh, not a good one. Forward. So today, our mission in technologies is basically three pillars, if you will. But basically, we develop, promote, and engage the use of IT and technology in our member communities, with emphasis on improving connectivity infrastructures. And connectivity is the base of many things, and you need stable connectivity to use technologies in a that demands quality, like education. It demands quality, stability. Affordability as well has to play in the picture, right? Because it has to be part of your business case. So as you can see here, we do advocate some of the issues through the First Mile Connectivity Consortium organization, which Rob McMahon leads. But I'll explain that at the end. But we came across issues where we see that wasn't fair for First Nations when we were treated like Bell Canada's, or when doing our own fiber, which wasn't fair, and they weren't doing their part to make it fair. So we were in that realm where we had to, it wasn't fair. So we found a way to get to CRTC to make these complaints. So anyway, there is a voice if you want to bring your issues, and that's the point I want to say to that. To the CRTC through the organization of the First Mile Connectivity Consortium. The second pillar is that we maintain complex networks, and if you are interested in learning more about what technologies we use, it's a pleasure to talk to you. But you're going to find out that using the same technologies is easier in maintaining and supporting it. So basically, if you have multiple communities, or even a single community for that matter, it's about using the same technologies because it's easier to support and maintain. That's all there is to it. And the training component as well is easier to keep up to date. And finally, we do our best to use the social economic aspect to effective use in technology. So we do our best to be on the forefront of community, how would you say, innovation through, I don't know, distance learning, training, any aspects that use and leverage technologies. We try to be there to support those activities and our members. This is a resource that I wanted to share with you all. In 2015, we developed standards in education. And this is today used as how would you say, a benchmark for us in terms of our framework. And in that guide is a technology section. We developed standards in technology. And you'll see there's roughly 20 or 21 standards that we developed, and these are still relevant today. And these are guides that we use actually to do the work that we're doing today, be it connectivity, be it tech support, purchasing. So these are all listed in detail there. So if you go to our website, you could find that guide, and it'll give you some detail and other aspects to governance of technology. So a really helpful guide for you. Early on, we decided to go with a certain model of broadband connectivity to do our work. And I don't know if anybody knows KNET, but in Northern Ontario, they were early leaders of connectivity development in First Nations, and they developed this model that you see on the screen that shows this is a real Indigenous broadband model where the red line, which represents the internet connection, is servicing all of the community for residential and public sector needs. So if you are considering this type of model, there's different aspects and funding, I suppose, that comes with getting the support that you need. But I'll be talking about those funding resources a little later on, but this is the model that we use. So I don't know if many of you have used or are using wireless. Wireless is a good technology. It is, however, short-term in terms of life use. The antennas wear out, but it's something that we used as well. We use it temporarily still while we deploy fiber, but fiber is the standard for all public sector buildings. Residential, we don't so much use residential support, but we did recently complete two fiber to the home projects. In northern, located in the middle of Quebec. So again, based on this model. So for those who are considering doing public sector broadband, our organization was successful in getting these funding supports. The big one for us is the First Nations Infrastructure Fund. Communities have the option to apply by themselves or through a group to do broadband connectivity, and broadband connectivity is one of the eligible activity that you can do in the program. So over the years, we've been using this program actually proposal based. It's every year you got to submit a proposal. So every year we do, and we've been getting, on average between, I would say 100,000 to 700,000, depending on the availability of funding. But our project is for 22 communities. So it will depend on your size of your project. But they've turned into a stable funding partner. This might change with different government in play, but today it's stable and they're supportive of the work we do. And there's also the First Nations Inuit Health Branch who are players, stakeholders in this public sector domain. So they've also been big in supporting our needs and continue to do so. So they provide resources for connectivity for health centers and what have you, or health sector, public sector, if you will. So there's the link. But if you need more information, or if you need our FINIF representative at Aboriginal Affairs to talk to your representative, it would be a pleasure, because I did this connection at Atlantic, and there's useful information between that level of how you go about developing connectivity projects. So feel free, if you want me to connect your ISK representative for FINIF to ours, and they could exchange what they did to support us. So that support is there for you if you. And then you got the provincial infrastructure support programs. But honestly, for us, we've been receiving FINIF mainly and e-health monies to do our work. So Like I said, what's eligible under this program: fiber optic material and construction, networking equipment and maintenance, and engineering services, and network cabling infrastructure. So what that means for networking cabling, often you go to a building that has cabling all over the place. You really need to centralize it well so that IP telephony and all that becomes more stable when you use that. So it's important to do that work as well. For the residential broadband needs, there is a link there that I'm providing, and it's through the Aboriginal Indigenous Affairs website, which will direct you to those funds there, like I said, and CRTC Broadband Fund. I believe the Broadband Fund is in its third year. It has 5 years. The funding application period is closed currently. So I believe they're going to be opening another round. So your information is available through that website link that you see there. For our experience, we've been able to get funding through the Universal Broadband Fund for 2 projects back in 2018, where we deployed fiber optic to the home, including a transport upgrade over 130 kilometers of fiber in the road. So it depends on your needs. So pre-engineering is going to be important when you do that analysis to determine your need. There are differences across regions. I also see in Quebec, we're actually fortunate because the province of Quebec does have a special program in place this year, aiming to connect all homes with fiber optic. So they are actually working with ISET in Ottawa to make that happen. So by end of December, most of the province will be linked with fiber optic to the home or high-speed internet. So this is not happening across Canada, and I hope it somehow helps or expands that way. But right now, it's very different. So I couldn't tell you what's happening across Canada except for Quebec. So what is eligible under this residential broadband funds? Basically, all residential needs, including the backhaul for your connectivity needs there. So, which is a big issue for some First Nations, especially up north, where there's lack of fiber transport. So I just wanted to show you a simple model of how we deploy fiber optic in the community. Basically, you have to select a distribution point, also referred to as a POP or point of presence. And this serves as your center of your network. So this center has to be a building that's up to date, recommended with a generator backup so that the power, if it goes out, you have a power backup. For us, our experience has been health centers. Health centers in Quebec are the newer building infrastructures. And so we've been using them as the centers of our network. So it works in a star configuration for fiber. So like in the model that you see there. So in addition to the local network, each network has a firewall protecting the entire network. It doesn't make sense to have a firewall for 6 buildings. You do a firewall for all buildings, making it more manageable and all that stuff, because it does take time to manage firewall appliances. And you want to make sure that the firewall has the attention that it needs to be updated and all that, because that is your security in and out. So that's really important. Fiber optic for the external connection is essential, because with that you could subscribe to the capacity you need. So I'm just showing a 10 megabyte capacity there. Our standard now for communities is 1 gigabyte. So this right now, this would fill the pipe in theory. However, fiber optics can go more than 1 gig. Now they could go up to 40 gig, I think, or what is it I was saying? I know you're shaking your head. You could tell us 100 gig or whatever the possibilities are when the equipment is at that specification, right? So anyway, yeah, so this is the model that we use to show communities what we're trying to do for them. So it's been a helpful diagram in that sense. So how did we do it? How did we get there? We started off in 2002, basically developing our expertise And at that time, we actually became a regional management organization for the First Nation SchoolNet program. And this is how it all started for us. We became technology providers in that sense, but not experts by no means, because we had the mandate to install connectivity in schools. And at that time, they were using satellites. So, you know, we're starting right from a basic level of service. So I just wanted to show you there through the years, we developed collaboration with other experts across Canada. These sites or these organizations still do exist. So I just want to mention that these are potential resources for you, collaborators. We do on occasion talk to them. So that collaboration is still there, but it's not as formal as it used to be. Since the SchoolNet program did terminate, we had to find other means to continue that collaboration. And that's through the First Mile Connectivity Consortium, which I'll show you at the end of this presentation. So, but anyway, these are possible resources for you to go to in your region if you would like. So since we had a global need across our 22 member communities, it was essential for us to develop a visionary document to explain why we needed fiber optics in the communities and how we were going to do it. So we did get together in 2007 to develop a project that would see all fiber connections across all public sectors in our member communities. So we started with a research and assessment work to develop a proposal. So we hired a telecommunication consultant. This telecommunication consultant made the connections with an engineering firm who did the work on paper, like in theory, to develop costing for you. So this work is necessary to create preliminary assessments and funding estimates that you need to take it to the next level. So that's an important initial part for you. If you're going to initiate a project, do a good assessment and get the right people to do your assessment. So once that process is done, I called it pre-engineering process. We redefined. I have a spelling mistake. Oh no, we refined our financing requirement. So once you get there, you'll see how more accurate you get with your data, your costing. Make sure that you include local cabling improvements and all the other bits and pieces that you need to make fiber used properly in each building. And then we began our financing search that year in 2007. And we also started a campaign with communities to promote the project and to explain the project. The FINIF program, by the way, does require a band council resolution. So we had to seek band council resolutions from each community to participate in the FINIF program. So just to give you a bit of history on what happened next for us, in 2007, we did receive partial funding, only partial funding. I think it was like we needed 7 million, we only got 1 million. But it was enough to start. So we did do a call for bids. And based on the bidding and the costing and the, how do you say, the scope of what we can do at that time, we started with 6 First Nations. We're all ready to go. We have to make sure that we do the, I would say, the requirement to put fiber on the poles. So in order for you to put fiber on the poles legally and in the right sense, up to specification, up to code, you need to register to CRTC as a non-dominant carrier, and that's free. We have example letters that you could use to apply and get your non-dominant status. With that, you can apply for permits to put fiber on the pole. So there is rules, there is codes in each region for that, but basically, whoever owns the pole, you need access, or the path or the space on the pole where the fiber, the telecommunication corridor is. You need to ask permission to put the permit, get a permit to put your fiber in that space. So you'll see that when you do your engineering, your engineers are going to tell you which permits are needed for which pole. They do all that detailed work, so let them take care of it. But the bottom line is that you're applying for permits to put your fiber on the pole. If communities own your own poles, you don't have to do this process. You don't have to. You can skip this step. But for our communities, most of them did have Bell or hydro poles in their community. Select an engineering firm. I just wanted to show you that here are some of the engineering firms we work with: Exitel, Jesma, Telecom, L4, Stantec. I see that Stantec is a Canadian company, so they probably exist in other regions. So you might see that there might be a difference in engineering offers between companies, but just be careful that it's different between public sector networking is much more simple than residential, of course, because there's less connectivity endpoints to do. So just be careful when you look at a residential engineering firm that they have the experience needed to do that work. So I know Stantec in our region has been a big player for that, supporter for that. So we received 3 bids in our work in public sector, and it's the way to go. I could share how would you say, a call for bids template with you. I don't mind doing that if you would like. When we use this to identify, to call for bids, I mean for construction. So it's really effective to do call for bids because we've seen a big price difference in the cost between suppliers. So it's worth doing for sure. So anyway, I have a template if you'd like to get that, not a problem. And then at the end, once the construction is done and everything, it's important to establish annual support and maintenance contracts with your fiber contractor or construction company, because you want to be sure that they're there when you need them, like next day. That it depends on your service agreement. And to be predictable in terms of costing too, because you don't want them to change rates depending on the month or the month of the year or whatever. So you want to protect your costing as well, right? So that ensures that we need to have an agreement. And I just wanted to show you that you can install fiber in the wintertime, especially aerial on the poles, not so much on the ground, obviously, but you can do that in the wintertime. Just to give you an idea of some of the costs just for fiber optic construction that we had to go through back in 2019. And as you can see there, it doesn't necessarily rely on the cost or the length of the network, but it's also all the poles, the infrastructure. So there's other things that impact the final cost at the end. As you can see, yeah, okay, Kitigan-Zibi at the end at the most buildings and the biggest or the longest 4-kilometer stretch of fiber. So if you combine them both, it does create a bigger cost. So just be mindful that the more buildings you do, it's going to create more work and more cost to do fusioning and what have you. So so there you have it. Just one last point. It's one thing to put fiber in your buildings, but just make sure that you account for the networking switching equipment, and all that's, and your wireless gear. If you're going to plan to put wireless in your buildings as well, that's not included in this cost. So I would easily say that networking equipment for Listegorge is easily 60,000-70,000. So it's really double the cost of your network deployment. And FINIF does cover those costs as well. So that's a good project to go to, or a good program to go to. So this map here basically puts everything in a one spot for our members. And what we did here is we showed how communities are connecting to each provider. So as you can see, we have different providers in Quebec, and each of those go independently through the providers to the internet. Each community does have a firewall, which is represented in the blue dot. For community information, I did add the residential level of connectivity there for them. So this is like a reference map for them as well. And some of the services that we do for member communities. So that's just a summary map of our connection. So I use Microsoft Visio to do that map, by the way. And finally, I just want to put another resource for you out there. The First Nation, the First Mile Connectivity Consortium, or firstmile.ca, is an excellent site for you to refer to. There's a lot of community stories of how communities deployed their broadband and issues that they came across as well. There's also information on what's happening in terms of CRTC news and other program news that might be new, like the CRTC Broadband Fund. We'd like to think, Rob, First Mile was critical to the creation of the fund because the First Mile group was there at CRTC hearings at the basic service objective, arguing for basic service objective to fiber optic, a broadband fund that First Nations can apply to directly, and this was accepted. So that's part of the work that the First Mile does. And then training, but training wasn't accepted, but we're still pushing that. So now we're looking at cellular the cellular access to cellular megahertz free spectrum. As you know, right now it's the telcos that own the spectrum. The two communities that I referred to who are rather isolated in Quebec are trying to do a cellular network, but they're obligated to work with the telcos. So what we're trying to propose is that First Nations own the spectrum and let them do their own projects, get them to govern the work that's needed to deploy cellular connectivity. So this is some of the work that we're doing to promote ownership that's tied into the reconciliation efforts that First Nations are doing to take control of their community or their services or whatever, their governance. So anyway, this is something we bring to the CRTC as attention. So I believe that's the end of my presentation. I'm 5 minutes short, I believe.
Mhm. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Tim, for that presentation. Very informative. We do have a couple questions here. One from the audience. So I'll try to summarize kind of what's being asked. But if I'm not on the mark, Terry, maybe you can jump in and add something to that. But one of the participants was asking about, I guess, more so the backhaul. Did your projects include funding of the backhaul to the community in terms of the fiber backhaul? Because I think one of the communities is waiting for the fiber to get to the community. So did you include that, in your proposals, the cost of that, or do you have to wait for somebody to bring that to you?
The backhaul, if I were to refer to the FNF program, the FNF program is not really the program for backhaul, but they will support part of your backhaul if it's a reasonable cost. For example, I don't know how long this transport entails. Is it like 30 kilometers or is it like 5?
I'm not sure. Maybe Terry can provide just some specifics in terms of what type of distance they're looking for to get the backhaul, the fiber to the community.
So,
Yeah, we're looking about 70.
right to Owen Sound, I think,
Owen
is where
Sound,
the
yeah.
closest fiber line is at this point, and it's about 70 kilometers.
It would be a challenge to go through FNF, but it wouldn't hurt to ask them that you have the cost for that. And I would put it on them to find other stakeholders because it's their job to do that. So I know that the FNF folks have connections now with ISED and other connectivity, funders. So I would work with your local FNF representative. I don't know if they're proactive in that, but for us, we were able to use partial funding from them to get the transport there. But honestly, the majority of transport costs in that scope or that scale would be the Universal Broadband Fund or something from ISED at that level. So, but talk to your FNIF representative to see what they can do to help you with that.
Okay, thanks, Tim. I think one of the things we talked about at last week's presentation was just around the proposals and how you've been so successful with your proposals. And one of the things you mentioned was just providing, having that engineering study or having that supporting documentation to, I guess, support your need. As I think we can all say, like, for instance, you can say, well, we don't have fiber here, so we need it. We can just say that. But if you don't have the supporting technical documentation within your proposal, I think it's tough for the funders to, I guess, advocate or to justify that. And the other thing, I guess, part of that is the political advocacy you mentioned. How important is that, or was that for you guys in terms of having that political advocacy to support your proposals when they went in or prior to when they went in?
Right. Yeah, for sure. When you do your proposal, like our Vision 2007 document, what we did, and I'm willing to share that too. It's public information. So, it was critical to a partner with an engineering firm. That's your credibility in terms of your technical portion of the project. But you need to demonstrate that you can complete the project, and it doesn't hurt to partner with other, how would you say, other communities who've done it, to show that you have that expertise or that experience with you in your project. So, yeah, that has to all be part of that business case when you submit that to FNIF or Universal Broadband Fund.
Okay, thanks, Tim. I think Hussein may have had one question as well. Hussein?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Tim, for the excellent presentation. When you mentioned that the province of Quebec has a plan to connect all homes on fiber, is that a 1-year plan or multiple-year plan? And also, how challenging is it to connect Indigenous communities, given their remote locations on fiber, do you think? Thank you.
It was I believe it was a 2-year plan. It was, I think it was launched when they realized when COVID kicked in. I think it was launched in 2019, to be honest. So that's when they said they're going to work on connectivity. And in Quebec, there's 3 major carriers. So I guess there was an action plan developed with the province to do that. Interestingly, the way they did it is that they're collaborating with Ottawa. So I believe there's matching funding happening in the back that we don't see with the Universal Broadband Fund that's happening. Because I just so happen to know the engineer who used to work with ISED, he's working for Quebec. He's on loan to Quebec. So great, I have a connection now. I could talk to him to see, hey, how's it work for residential when the information is not accurate? What database do you use? Oh, we're obligated to use this database. And I said, well, okay, can we check that database to be sure it's accurate? And he says, sure, I think I could share that with you, through a non-disclosure or whatever thing. So that's a big concern, right? Because it's about accuracy of the data. And that's a problem with First Nations, is that all of this mapping relied on the reporting from the communities. So there's a big, not all communities report, they don't even have an email to check what's going on with the reporting. So there's a lot of accuracy concerns, and communities are asking for how can they go about clarifying it themselves. So that's what I've done. We're hoping to get that database access, and I'm asking that guy, how can that happen across Canada? So I put the question out to him this morning, actually, and because there's other people here from Alberta wanting to do the same. And I still don't have an answer back. So anyway, I believe it would be ISED that would be the point of contact to say that, how can I validate my data from my First Nation with your database, or which database do I need to verify with? So sorry for the
Okay.
long question, but long answer.
No problem, Tim. Thank you very much. I think we're going to cut it off there because we still have another presentation. But if anybody does have any questions in regard to Tim's presentation or their project, feel free to email myself, Hussein, or Tim directly. As he had mentioned, he's more than willing to help out, answer any questions, and provide any information that he can. So thanks again, Tim.
You're welcome. Bye, everybody.
So now I'd like to call on our second and final presenter of the day, Brian Nakaji. Brian is an account executive for the Western Bay James Bay Telecom Network. We are happy to have Brian join us here today. Brian, can you provide some additional background on yourself and then get into your presentation, please?
Sure, absolutely. I'll just share my content for now. And all right. See my screen?
We see it here.
Mm-hmm.
All right. While you do that, my interest in information and communications technology began when I was saw a posting on the Western James Bay Telecom Network, and they posted a position that I thought was intriguing. So I, new to technology, I applied for the position, and sure enough, I got it. And I am from initially prior to relocating rather. I'm originally from Attawapiskat, and I'm a member of the of that First Nation. But I do now reside in Moose Factory. I'm also the a master's program at Queen's that I'm taking right now with the public administration, focusing on public policy. In particular, like as the digital divide and how that relates to the northern and southern counterparts, which is really the reason why I got so intrigued with the digital services for the remote First Nations, and hence the reason why I am with the organization, the Western James Bay Telecom Network. So, yeah. I guess by the end of this presentation, you should be able to describe the tasks, the benefits, and risks and challenges of owning and operating a community-based network. We will examine why a community should undertake and build the CBN, discussing its benefits, and ensuring a smooth cost operations, fiber optic network business operations. What are the risk factors, challenges of a community-based network? and as well as what are the staffing needs and the required training capacity needs. And just as well, I should also stress that there may be some duplication with what Tim, Mr. Whiteduck had shared with you concerning backhaul, costing, funding applications, and fiber optic infrastructure. So, what do you call the what I call the 3C benefits of community-based broadband are the cost-efficient fiber optic network, the primary benefits, incentive in owning and operating a community-based network is ensuring an equitable and reliable transport infrastructure maintenance and operations. Indeed, a community effectively manages and monitors the maintenance or repairs to its network infrastructure and internet services. Connectivity performance with improved broadband connectivity spectrum. The performance provides a robust and reliable high-speed internet and data services to its customers. Consequently, accessibility to information and communication technologies from a place of digital isolation serves to offer opportunities of a quality of life far better than they were none. Affordable cost to the end user, complete with a pricing structure, enables an enhanced strategy to e-service platforms through data, voice, and TV interface previously inaccessible. So, just briefly, to ensure a smooth, cost-efficient fiber optic network business operations, there's the monitor. There exists a monitoring software such as Sabix or otherwise with notification features to verify the availability and responsiveness of your ICT network. This monitoring software is in real-time alerting software in the event of network failure. The software graphs the network bandwidth usage, and a report is analyzed each month by technical staff, both internally and external. Once checked, the report is sent every month to your community-based network management team for review. For example, the Western James Bay has a local technicians available in each community to provide installation and or troubleshooting services. In addition, Western James Bay has partnered with an external company to provide remote monitoring as well as management services for the network with a 24-hour customer support. Western James Bay currently has 55 anchor institutions that have already existed and are receiving services. However, no new fiber segments or construction is provided for the anchor institutions. There will be 957 new fiber to the home residential subscriber uptake implemented and management of in-house call and with the aid of software billing service system. The community-based network infrastructure is expected to last over a 20-year period with regular maintenance, which includes consumables and upkeep. The appropriations as well for the replacement of network services and whatnot. With the infrastructure maintenance and operations, anticipating and mitigating risks and challenges in infrastructure maintenance and operations of community-based continuum. The following are payback period, information and communications technologies infrastructure, once completed, is an investment in equity, excluding grants or loans. The conventional payback periods, say a minimum of 10-year capital recovery, less of make ready for any anomalies by a third party at point of presence, such as the hydro pole realignments for an aerial fiber to the home deployment, etc. Financing, equity and debt financing for fiber to the home community-based network uptake. The major challenges was securing the financing of the infrastructure from all levels of governments, even including chartered banks, trust financiers, economic development initiatives. Also keeping in mind the HST considerations to be included in your working capital, influencing community and other stakeholders for buy-ins, for example. Community-based network operations and co-locations network capacity. Annually, the total community-based network roughly is $375,000 to maintain and operate at our end, which includes excluding staffing and other general expenditures and risk insurance. Cost, nearly $5 million to build the expansion to the fiber network. COVID-19 challenged and delayed most of the work in terms of the expansion project that we encountered. And as you know, gateway and transport services were negotiated through Ontario, provider for the internet servicing Moosonee, the nearest town, and Moose Factory Island. And we've also upgraded our gig from 2 to 5 at a cost of roughly $40,000 per month to service the canopies that we currently have, which we are now starting to decommission in our 3-site First Nations of Attawapiskat, Fort Albany, and Saskatchewan. Infrastructure depreciation, inventory, and maintenance costs are also included in there. Important as well to include your reserve funds, contingency planning in terms of risk management and mitigation, such as power redundant backup, which is needed and is currently built around the system. The financing for expansion is being engineered. Fiber replacement costs for aerial break or fix, for example, and 24-hour emergency response plan. Portable backup generators should kick in when power is interrupted in the for our HVAC servicing those units in each of the communities. So you see this graph?
Yes.
And with that graph has your 5 and 10-year periods. The reason behind that, with taking into account those factors, which is your payback period at the start, supposed to decline over a period. Say up to a 10-year period. Penciled in green is your reserve funds starting to grow. Initially, there's this gap. And within that 10-year period, everything acts as an inverse. The gap from this suggests that your payback period has declined while your placement funds have increased. Somewhere in the middle, and this is for an example, is at equilibrium, where your payback period and replacement funds are equal, where your replacement funds have generated over that period. Hopefully, nothing major has happened. You follow? If you invested initial funds at the start should decline, the replacement funds have increased. So, certification and training initiatives. The company I work for encourages that all its staffing to become certified and trained in ICT, including fiber splicing, etc. The kinds of training for community-based network staffing is fiber optic certification and IT, etc. Ontario colleges offer information, technician certification, and diploma programs, as well as computer science programming. I encourage anyone to look into their local capacity needs to assess online training, education. It could be on a part-time basis if you're working full-time. Community-based infrastructure building capacity. What types of positions, staffing is involved in a community-based network, like a list of potential staff positions. At Western James Bay, the operations and technical manager is available. Finance personnel for claim submissions and billing services, etc. On-site technicians and IT, etc. is also included in the fiber to the home expansion project. I will also be including the organizational chart momentarily. There are other positions that could be made available, such as your computer science engineer, data processor for accounting, project management, as well as some other inputting that may be required for accounting purposes. And for your own estimation, what are your capacity and training needs for your own computing needs for your community-based network? For instance, the community-based background, Western James Bay leases 12 fiber strands from Five Nations Energy, owners of dark fiber, which then became lit in 2017. Plans went underway to construct and expand fiber to residential customers. The estimated construction completion and operation is 2022 of end of this month, the fully servicing Attawapiskat, Saskatchewan, and Port Albany. However, as I mentioned before, COVID-19 delayed the installation of the complete construction. Western James Bay has 3 point of presence in each community, is co-located in the 5 Nations Energy Telecom shelters to amplify Indigenous voices. Community-based networks is a transport network that spans from Moosonee along the western coast of James Bay to Port Albany, Saskatchewan, and Attawapiskat, which then also will service the expansion project of fiber to the home. The residents and entrepreneurs of Attawapiskat, Saskatchewan, and Port Albany need reliable, high-speed internet and data services greater than their current download and upload speeds. At that time, download speed was less than 5, while upload was near 1. And it created some problems in terms of providing the services, which then became a trigger for the need to expand fiber to residential customers, service through a third-party network, which in this case was mentioned before by Mr. Whiteduck, Exetel, and we will then be decommissioning that part of the service network soon, over before the start of this coming year. As I said, this organizational chart and showing the roles and responsibilities in terms of management. Management is served by a general manager and an assistant general manager responsible for the smooth operations of the telecom network, implement and maintain working relationships through policies, supervising and managing staff. Through finance, there's an account executive, assist in the business growth of the company, maintain existing clientele accounts and finding new business prospects, and responsible for the company purse, as they say. Network operations, technical on-site technical support staff, the help desk, IT, customer care support and assistance, network dashboard monitoring network system that we do have, and fiber installs and repairs. With the data processing, we do have an office assistants maintaining account records, issue customer billings, and as also acting as our receptionist. And with regards to the strategic alliance partnering arrangements, first off, the Western James Bay's general partner and the 3 First Nation owners, Attawapiskat, Port Albany, and Saskatchewan. Then we also have our corporate sponsors, such as the Internet Society. And what sets Western James Bay apart from the competition? We have Starlink. And with Starlink, say from the source of Port Albany, destination Timmins, the ping measured in the millisecond. Then there's Western James Bay, their fiber to the home expansion project. The source from Port Albany to Timmins, their ping or the data packets. ExploreNet, same thing. Their data packet transport and measured in milliseconds, 600 to 700. So I have a graph here. Suppose this car traveling here. This one. From Port Albany to Timmins. Traveling back. Port Albany. Measured in 50 milliseconds, for instance, for Starlink. This car will go to Timmins and back to Port Albany. In real life example, it pertains to Western James Bay communities. If you look at ExploreNet, for instance, and take 700 milliseconds, the time it you send a package from Port Albany to Timmins and back to Port Albany, it takes that distance and the length, and in terms of when you get it, 700 milliseconds compared to Western James Bay network, 15 milliseconds. And that's like, you've gone to Timmins with your data packet at least 40 times before ExploreNet delivers the packet or the goods or the bandwidth in terms of the bandwidth measure. And with Starlink, it's 50. And that's about 3 times slower than Western James Bay's bandwidth speed. So in closing, hopefully I have impressed upon your minds about why a community should take on community-based network, realizing the benefits, however, knowing what the risk challenges are, and in terms of staffing needs and the required training capacity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian. Very informative presentation as well. I think we're looking at, in terms of time, it's 2:57 right now. So if there are any questions, just please post them. We do have a recording of all the posts, so we can definitely get you an answer for any of your questions if you do have them. I would like to, just for time purposes, just want to thank the presenters as well, both Tim and Brian. Oh, Tim had to leave us earlier, but thank you, Brian. At this point, I'd like to call on Rob if he's still here. just to go over and explain the post survey and post that in the chat. Rob?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Bruce. So yeah, thanks to the presenters as well. That was a great session. Yeah, just before any participants leave, if you could please complete the post-course link. I've just put it in the chat. It's another short survey. So just before you go today, please make sure you complete that. And then I'll just pause there. So as you're completing that, maybe some folks have questions for Brian as well.
Okay, thanks, Rob. I do have one quick question. I know this has come up on a number of occasions, this term. What is, when you say black fiber, what does black fiber mean?
Okay, just a second. Dark fiber versus lit fiber. It's fiber that's unused, just sitting there waiting to be used. And once it's used and connected, then it becomes lit. And it's fancy, I guess, terminology. Once you start to use it, then it becomes lit. You follow?
Okay. That makes sense now. So now I've learned something once again. Thank you very much for that explanation.
Yes. Yeah, just for the disclaimer, this presentation is intended for instruction purposes only. Any other use is the sole discretion of the user for information purposes and not to be confused for any other type of what have you. So use at your own discretion, more or less. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Brian. So while the participants are completing the survey, maybe I'll ask Hussein just to maybe deliver some final comments of the day.
Thank you so much, Bruce. Thank you so much, Brian, and thank you to Tim who had to leave us for the conference. But really very insightful information, and I think part of the objective of this initiative is to share experience, to share knowledge, as well as share resources in terms of people can reach out to each other, to people who have experience in doing so, and get from their experience how things can be approached in a successful way, and how to avoid hurdles that people have gone through in the past. So Tim offered to be of support. I'm sure Brian, as well as from yesterday, Jesse and who was yesterday again?
Mike.
Yes, and Mike. So we have these are resources that are available. They made themselves available for the community. So don't hesitate to reach out if you have specific questions to them. And this session will conclude the level 1 training for this initiative. We look then to initiate level 2 training for a small number of communities in January, as I mentioned early on. But thank you so much for participating. We look forward to continuing collaborating. And the goal is to bridge digital divide and connect the unconnected and provide digital literacy to those who have some infrastructure already in place. Thank you so much. Back to you, folks.